Good morning, everyone, and happy Wednesday. I am so glad you are joining us for our live stream today. We have a very special guest to talk all about morning routines with us. I met Lindsay online from a mutual friend, and when I found out that she had co-authored this amazing book, I really wanted to bring her on and share her expertise with all of you parents, because I know that during the school year, morning routines are really part of everything that we do. However, when it comes to the summer, morning routines kind of fall by the wayside and everyone's on their own time schedule. But I know that having some sort of ritual in the morning definitely sets us up for success. It helps to shift our mindset. So I am so excited to introduce you to Lindsay McCarthy. Lindsay, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So will you take us back a little bit pre-book? What were you up to and what led to writing this book?
Yeah, so pre-book, we had a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old, and our lives were a little chaotic. And Tyler was in kindergarten. He went to a public school, and, mornings kind of consisted of hurry up, get your shoes on, eat breakfast, get to the bus, and it wasn't very joyful. So kind of flash forward, Mike and I went to this personal development seminar called One Life Fully Lived, and Hal Elrod was the keynote that year. So he was talking about this miracle morning ritual that consisted of 6 different things that you do in the morning called the Lifesavers, which stands for silence, affirmations, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribing. And Mike and I just kind of turned to each other and we're like, we got to try this thing. And so on the plane ride home, we read the whole book cover to cover, and, we were gung-ho. We're like, we're going to get up an hour earlier. We're going to do this thing. We're going to, be good. And so we did that. We started waking up an hour earlier. And as soon as we started doing that, our kids started interrupting us. And we're like, what the heck? Like, we're trying to be good here, and you guys are preventing us from doing that. And it actually took my 2-year-old at the time, our daughter Ember, to say to me, Mommy, we want to do what you're doing. And I was like, oh. I'm like, hello, light bulb. Like, why don't we teach them how to do this? And so we started doing it as a family and teaching them little pieces of the savers. And with them, we kind of started with affirmations and exercise. So we would have them jump on this little mini trampoline and say positive things about themselves. And they really enjoyed doing that. So then we created these ABC affirmation books with them. So every morning they would pick a new word. So it started with A, like I'm awesome is Tyler's. And then B, I am brave. Emmy says, I am beautiful inside and out. And so we did that for like a month. We went through each letter of the alphabet and let them choose a word. And so by the end of the month, we kind of had this exercise thing in place. We had affirmations in place. We had, for adults, it's called scribing. But for a 2-year-old, she doesn't know how to write yet. So we started calling that creativity. So each morning when they would pick a word, then she would draw a picture about what that word meant to her. And, we expanded on exercise a little bit for the kids too and called it health. And so they were getting a healthy breakfast, and we got to talk to them about making healthy choices in the morning and what does that look like. And so for kids, the acronym is actually different. So for adults, it's SAVERS. And through this process of teaching our kids the SAVERS, we created a new acronym for them called CHARMS. So CHARMS stands for creativity, health, affirmations, reading, meditation, and service. So we combine silence and affirmations into meditation. And we added one called service, which we really wanted to instill in our kids that it's not always all about you, and we want you to help around the house. We want you to, be good citizens in the world. So we get to talk to them every day about, what does service look like and how could you be of service today? And
that is so great. And I love this new acronym because it's something definitely kids can resonate with because they understand what a charm is. They may not understand what a savers is or what that verbiage means, but the charms, that's such a great simplification for them to understand and for them to really walk through those same steps in their own way.
Yeah, that it actually came from our 6-year-old Tyler. After we had been doing savers for about a month, he kind of turned to me and he's like, "Mom, I don't get it. Why do I have to save my life every day?" And I was like, "Oh man." Again, light bulb moment. Like, of course you don't attach to that because you're a kid, you're brand new. Like, all this stuff is, kind of normal to you. Like, they've seen us meditate since they were babies. So meditation wasn't weird for them. Like, saying positive affirmations is not weird for them. As adults, we kind of turn to personal development when we kind of hit a rough patch or, we want to kind of redefine ourselves, but kids are brand new. So for them, we kind of explained to them Hal's story and why he called it the Lifesavers. And then he's like, "Yeah, but I don't get it." And I'm like, "Well, we don't have to call it that. Like, let's make it our own. What do you want to call it?" And that's when we kind of started playing with the words and created the charms.
That's so great. And I think you said something so profound there that sometimes it takes the adults a moment to step back and the kids have to step in and say, wait, because they're so literal about everything. So when they're asking questions about seeking answers for themselves, it's such a great opportunity to let them step up and let them really be responsible for helping to shape the way that things turn out.
Yeah, and we're big on letting our kids have a voice in our family and what goes on around the house. So I was so glad that he was like, "I don't get it, Mom. Like, help me figure this out." I'm like, "Oh yeah, of course."
Yeah, it's so funny. I actually read an email earlier that was from my friend Janine, and she said she was relating the story about how kids are very literal, about how her husband said to her he was going to go jump in the shower. And the son said, "Wait, no, Daddy, we don't jump in the shower. We jump on the trampoline, maybe on the bed." So I just think it's so interesting that we often forget about what it was like to be new, like you said, to not have experienced these things and understand all of the different meanings certain phrases can have as adults that as a kid, there's no frame of reference for them to understand. So it's such a great, great story.
Yeah, there's a funny story about that with Tyler when he was little. I was going to the gym and he's like, "Mom, why do you always go to the gym?" And I'm like, "Well, buddy, I'm a little out of shape. I got to exercise." And later in the day, I go in and he's jumping on his bed. And I'm like, "Ty, what are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, I'm exercising." I'm like, "Oh, cool, buddy." And he goes, "I'm all out of ovals." And I was like,
"Oh my gosh."
Out of shape. And
oh, I love it. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it makes me smile just thinking about all these fun stories that, kids have this magical way of bringing us adults back to reality and back to the fun because they just question things that we no longer question. And it's such a magical thing to watch happen and watch it unfold.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that too, because actually the charms in the book are in a chapter called Playfulness. And, so we kind of have like the 3 P's of parenting. It's purposefulness, playfulness, and perspective. And we put the charms in the playfulness chapter because, that's the sense we want the kids to get from it, that it is playful and it's fun and it's not something they have to add on to their day and a chore to do, like one more thing to check off the list. It's like, no, we want to start our day with fun and with playfulness and not like drudgery and, oh, I have to do all these things.
No, and that's so great too. And I love that you use the word playfulness because again, as adults, we somehow relegate play to kid world and it doesn't become relevant for us as we continue. However, if we can find that playfulness every day, especially with our kids and in our family, I think everything becomes just more fun, and there's a more sense of relaxation and enjoyment to everything we're doing. And it doesn't feel like, you said, like we're rushing or it becomes a chore. It's something that we get to experience, and that we have these moments together where we can play and just be our authentic selves, and not the selves that maybe society thinks we should be, or the notions that we have in our head about what being a responsible adult might look like.
Right. I think even as adults, like, you want your miracle morning to look like that.
Yes.
It should feel like Christmas morning every day. Like, I get to get up an hour earlier and work on me and do things I want to do, instead of all the things I, quote unquote, should do or have to do. And
absolutely. And I've been so cognizant lately of the verbiage that I use when it comes to doing things. It's never a have to or a should, but I get to do all these things. And that little simple switch has really changed a lot of the way that I go about my day. And when things pop up and are challenging, it's definitely a different sort of perspective, a different sort of mindset to be able to live in a place where it's not a should or a have to.
Mm-hmm. It's I choose to.
Yes, and choice is such a huge key. And I know everything we do here is all about giving kids opportunities and choices to explore different ways to create and to contribute and to serve the world. So thank you for all of that. I am curious to know, so you've been practicing these charms with your kids. Mm-hmm. At what point did you then decide maybe we should reach out to Hal and talk about doing something for families?
Yeah. So, I'm echoing now. I don't know why.
Oh, I don't hear an echo on my end.
All right, we'll just ignore it then. At One Life Fully Lived, we heard him speak in 2014. Okay. Flash forward to 2015, my husband and I were both presenters at the conference, and Hal again was the keynote. So we got to meet him at the little welcome dinner for all the presenters the first night. And I just kind of went up to him and I thanked him for writing it and told him what we were up to, that we'd been practicing as a family. And he's like, your kids do this? He's like, my kids don't do it. He's like, that's so cool. Like, tell me, like, how'd you get them to do it? I'm like, they wanted to. Like, we didn't even tell them they had to. And so I got to have that conversation with him. And I said, my son is here at the conference. He would love to meet you. Mm-hmm. And he said, bring him to breakfast tomorrow. So Tyler comes down with his ABC affirmation book and is saying his affirmations for Hal. And Hal's mind is just being blown. And he's like, can I take pictures of this? Like, I want to feature you guys on something. And we're like, yeah, whatever you want. It sounds great. And a couple weeks later, I woke up with these poems in my head about how to explain. At this point, it was still savers. So it was how to explain the savers to kids. And I sent that to him. Well, I sent it to my husband first because I was too scared to send it to Hal. But Mike's like, it's good. You should send it to Hal. So I did. And the next day he wrote back. And I was thinking like a little kid's picture book, like we could do something for kids. And I know you're working on something. If this is useful to you, please have it. And he wrote back like, I want to write a book with you for parents. He's like, parents need this information. And I was like, me? I'm like, I'm not a writer really. And he's like, it's okay. Either was I. He was like, you're not a writer until you do it. So he really encouraged us to do it.
What a great story. And earlier you were talking about making these choices. And I love that you made the choice to talk to Hal after your presentation and to thank him and let him know how impactful his book was for you and your family, because if you had not made that choice, who knows if this book would be in reality yet.
Yep.
I love it. And you touched on something too about the 3 P's of parenting, and you said they were purposeful, playful, and what is the third one?
Perspective.
perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So perspective is an interesting one. Can you describe how you tell parents about perspective?
Sure. So we follow Joseph Campbell's hero's journey in that chapter, and we just say, you know, our perspective is that everybody's on their own hero's journey. So even though in our journey, our kids may be our allies and our teachers, and we are their allies and teachers, we have to allow them to make their own mistakes and to live their own journey. And, you know, we can't dictate everything for them, that they have to learn these lessons in their own way. And as much as we want to kind of smooth the path for them so that they don't trip, you know, sometimes we're almost hindering them if we do that. So to kind of give them a little space to make mistakes and to find their own journey. And
that's amazing. And I love that you said to allow them to make mistakes, because I think that's something, mistakes, failure, all of those words in our society, they seem to be bad words. Where I think that as parents, as we're letting our kids grow up, they need to make those mistakes to have their own journeys and learn from them as well. And I remember when my oldest daughter was in kindergarten, she came home one day and she's very excited because she had won some little trinket, a little eraser or a pencil from her teacher. And when I asked her about why she won this little thing, she said, well, I didn't have any eraser marks on my page, Mommy, so I got a prize. And I was so mortified, thinking that, I'm sending her off every day to school so she can learn and grow and do these things. And then this teacher is telling her that you're getting rewarded for not making mistakes. And I just thought, okay, it's time for a conversation, because that is not at all how I feel. So I love that part of this process is allowing kids to make those mistakes and then go on and figure out their own way to resolve them, so that when they encounter it again or they have something similar, they have some tools in their back pocket that they can then pull out of and use those in that moment.
Yeah, and like we've read a lot about growth mindset and, you know, versus fixed mindset. And even the way we just praise our children instead of praising them for their attributes, to praise them for their efforts. And,
yes,
you know, not just say, oh, honey, you got an A, you're so smart. You know, it'd be like, oh, wow, you must have worked really hard to get that A.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, it's just those subtle shifts in mindset and a subtle shift in our verbiage to our kids and to ourselves that can definitely make a profound difference in all of our lives.
Yeah.
So I have a two-part question. I'll ask the first one to begin, and this is all about for parents. If they have never experienced this miracle morning and done the savers, what would you tell them is a reason why they might want to start pursuing that for themselves?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's all about being a role model for our kids. You know, we can't expect our kids to do something that we're not personally doing ourselves. Yeah. So to be the best version of ourselves, to then encourage our kids to be the best versions of themselves is the best reason in my mind why to do it.
Well, and that's such a great reason too, because being a role model, sometimes I know that I forget that too, and I'll do something and then I'll see my kids doing that thing and I'll think, wait, where did you learn that? But then I think back about what happened before. It's like, oh, I did that too. And especially about the way that we talk to ourselves and the way that we treat ourselves is something that kids pick up. I mean, in an instant. It's so fascinating to watch. All right, so parents that are listening to the live or catching the replay, think about being a role model for your kids. What do you want them to learn from you? Because they're definitely watching every move that we do and are learning more from us in our actions than through our words. So, okay, now parents want to be a role model for their kids. how do we start introducing the charms to our kids, especially if they're older, like middle school, high school, and this has not been part of their lives yet?
Mm-hmm. Well, then again, I think you need to start first. So you are modeling that behavior for them. And, with our kids, they kind of interjected themselves into our miracle morning. But for older kids, they're probably not going to do that.
Yeah.
So I think that's when you can kind of hand them the book. It's a really easy read and let them make their own choice. Just say, hey, I've started doing this thing and it's been really good for me. I would love for you to check it out and, tell me what your thoughts are. Maybe read the book together with an older kid. I'm a big believer in reading out loud to kids, or get it on Audible and listen to it in the car together.
Yeah.
Then you can kind of have discussions about it at the dinner table and say, hey, what did you think about what we heard today in the car? And
that's so interesting because I have an 11-year-old and a 14-year-old. So I'm trying to think about how to best introduce them to it. So yes, I was asking my oldest daughter this morning what books were on her list to read for this summer. So I may have to sneak this one in there for both of them and say, okay, read this book, and then we'll come back and chat about how this might look for both of you, because I'm sure it will look very different for both of them as they go through their own charms in the morning.
Mm-hmm. And there's a version for college students that my friend Natalie wrote that might be a good version for them to kind of start turning the wheels for college discussions too. Like, hey, the college kids are doing this. Like, then they might feel like, oh, I'm ahead of the game.
Well, and that's so interesting too, because my oldest, I know she was just talking to her counselor about being able to graduate with an associate's degree. So that entails taking some college courses concurrently with her high school courses. And so this might be something that really will be able to help her make that transition a little bit smoother for her if she has some sort of success plan for herself, especially in the morning time.
Yeah.
I love it. So before we hopped on live, you were telling me all about how you are going on this amazing adventure to go chase the Northern Lights. So I would love to know, you have this book out there, you have an amazing website, and I'll link that up below as well. But I want to know about these adventure trips you're on and how that came to being, and was that part of your miracle morning process that was manifested to get there? Lots of questions.
I know, like, where to start. So my husband and a few of his buddies, they started this men's mastermind called GoBundance. And they started it, I think in 2013 was the first kind of official trip. And, this was kind of, they did it on a bar napkin. They were like, wouldn't it be fun if we started doing these adventure trips that we want to go on, and we just started inviting people that we want to be friends with and want to hang out with on these trips, and we go and have these amazing adventures and talk about our goals and hold each other accountable and, build this tribe of guys. And they were like, yeah, let's do it. And so it kind of started real organically. They invited a couple people to Steamboat, Colorado. And I think there was 18 guys at the first one. And then, the next year they invited more people and more people. And now it's an organization that has 130 members.
Wow.
And a couple years ago, I was like, I want to go. And a couple of the other wives were like, we want to go. And like, can we bring our kids? And so then they kind of formed this new version of it called Fambundance. And the whole family gets to go, and we talk about our goals and hold each other accountable. And one of the pillars of GoBundance is bucket list adventures. So all of their trips are kind of planned around some sort of bucket list adventure. Like, they've gone to South Africa and dove with great white sharks, and they've hiked the Inca Trail to Machu Picchu, and they kayaked in Norway on the fjords. And this year they're going to go to Japan, and they've gone to Vietnam. They do an international trip every year. And so I was like, well, why don't we do that for Fambundance too? So last year we went to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and got to see the full solar eclipse, which was really cool. And this year we're like, let's try an international trip. Why not? So we are going to go chase the Northern Lights in Finland and Iceland. So we'll have 2 opportunities to see them.
Wow. That sounds amazing. I want to come along too, because that just sounds awesome to be able to go see these things that, like you said, are people's bucket list things. They have them, they're the wish list, and most people don't ever go after chasing those things. They just have it, in the back of their minds that they want to do it, but there's always something preventing them from doing it. So what I love is that this idea came organically, and it's just grown since then. And now, because you have your kids and your family, and now you're able to include other families, I think that is such a remarkable gift that you've given to all of us. So thank you.
Yeah. And it's been really fun too. And our kids look forward to these trips. Those are their best friends now, are the kids in Fambundance. And they're like, oh, when do we get to see those kids again? Like, we want to, because people live all over the country. So there's members in Texas and California and Minnesota, and we're in Pennsylvania. So it's like people are from everywhere. So when we all get together, all the hugs and the conversations.
Oh, that's so great. So if people are wanting to know more about these great adventures, where can they go to find out more information?
They could go to gobundance.com. It's GOBUNDANCE.com. And there's kind of a list of the adventures we have upcoming.
How fun is that? Oh my gosh. And I know you have a separate website as well. Can you share what that is and what people can find there?
Sure. It's gratefulparent.com is the website. And on there I have my blog. We have a list of coaches that we love, a list of books that we love. And there's personal development books, there's parenting books, and there's kids books on there. What else is on there? I don't even know. You can find more about me, more about Mike.
Amazing. Yeah, such great information on your website. So again, thank you for that. And as soon as we wrap up, I will come back or actually, you're welcome to come and put any links in below the comments if you would like, so people can just link to you directly and find out more, because I'm hoping this conversation inspires inquiry, because I want people to be asking questions about, this miracle morning thing. And it's a way that I can sort of start my day and make time for me. And because if I don't take care of me, I'm not being able to show up for the rest of my family or other people that we serve in the most effective manner. So definitely come back and share those. I would love to know if there is one parting piece of advice you could give to our viewers or our listeners about the miracle morning in their families.
Yeah. My advice would be, give yourself some grace. It's a very simple idea, but it's not easy to implement. And especially if you have young kids, it's okay to only do part of it in the morning and, exercise later in the day. And I always encourage people to make it your own, because it's a framework. It's a loose framework. But within that framework, there's a million books you could read. There's a bunch of different ways you could be silent. You could pray, you could meditate, you can, just sit outside for 5 minutes with your coffee. Make it fit you, because that's the way it's going to stick.
Yeah, such great advice. You have to take what's given to you and make it yours, because if you're trying to emulate exactly what someone else has done, it may or may not resonate with you and fit in your life. So once it fits, that's where the magic really starts to happen, where we can give ourselves this space to be with our own thoughts and gather ourselves and make plans for an amazing day. Awesome. So Lindsay,
people ask me, like, when do you wake up? And I'm like, I actually wake up really late for a miracle morning person. Like,
yeah, what time do you wake up? I'm curious to know.
I get up at 6:45, but if you go in the community, people are getting up at like 4 a.m., 5 a.m. I'm like, no.
Right. Well, and I tried that too, and I was like, that definitely does not work for me. I mean, I'm kind of like you, probably around 6-ish, 6:30, like is a normal time. So that makes sense for me too. So thank you for saying that you're not like a 3 a.m. riser, because that just helps for everyone out there too, to know that you have to make it yours. And just because someone's getting up at 3 or 4 or 5 does not mean that we have to do that as well. Because if we go in thinking that we're not able to do it because it's so early, we probably won't end up doing it.
Right.
Awesome. Lindsay, thank you so much for sharing your amazing book with us, providing a resource for parents to really start helping to educate their kids and themselves about taking the time to invest in our own selves and our kids to invest in themselves so that they can show up in the best ways possible.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
And I'll chat with you very soon. Thank you.